Today we are going to step-by-step walk you through how to make a crusty sourdough roll. We start by measuring out everything either on an electric scale or by volume. It's 7 ounces of sourdough starter, which is 1 1/4 cups, 13 ounces of white bread flour, which is around 2 1/2 cups, 6 1/2 ounces of water, which is 3/4 of a cup plus 1 tablespoon, and then we're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. If you have diastatic malt powder, you can use that as well, but plain white sugar is going to be fine. We mix this up by hand, just with a spoon, and that is going to rest for about 40 minutes in a step called autolyze. We can just go ahead and cover it with a damp towel, leave it on the counter, and we'll come back in between 30 and 60 minutes. Now, once the autolyze step is done, we need to add in our yeast and our salt. We're doing 1/2 teaspoon of instant yeast, 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, and we're going to knead the dough to work in these 2 ingredients. So we take it out of the bowl and put it directly on the counter, or if you have a floured board, that's fine too. We're going to knead it by hand for about, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes. What we're looking for is to make sure our gluten is fully developed enough so that we see windows in our dough. And I'll show you in a minute what a window will look like, and that will mean that you've kneaded it enough. If you have a bread machine and you want to knead it in the bread machine, that would work fine too. So we keep on kneading. It's going to start feeling sticky. And halfway through the kneading, I like to let it rest about 5 minutes and then come back, but that's not absolutely necessary. So once it starts feeling really smooth and soft under your hands, you can pull off about a little walnut-sized ball of dough, stretch it out, and see if you see any type of translucent area appearing. That is what's known as a window. That means that your gluten has been developed enough and it is ready to start rising. So we see a window. We're going to lightly oil a clean bowl, shape our dough into a ball, place it inside, cover it with a damp tea towel, and let it rise somewhere warm for about an hour. If your kitchen is not warm, you can just lightly heat up your oven, turn it off, and then put your dough in there. Make sure your oven is off while it's rising, or else it will kill it. So about an hour later, our dough is nice and puffy. We are going to dump it out and start shaping our rolls. I find that this is going to be 8 rolls in this recipe. I find that the easiest way to do it is to divide it in half, then quarters, then eighths. You can also use an electric scale if you want them to be exactly the same size. I'm not doing that, and they do end up a little bit uneven, but that's not really a big deal to me. So we divide it using a sharp knife into 8 roughly equal pieces. And you can see that the dough is a little bit sticky, so it's not super easy to work with, but that's fine. So don't be alarmed if it seems overly sticky, and really try not to add more flour at this stage. So now we are going to prepare our baking sheet by putting down a piece of parchment paper and sprinkling it with cornmeal. If you don't have parchment, you can just do a cooking spray and then really heavily cover it with cornmeal. To shape the loaves, you want to pinch them from the bottom. That's going to round out the top. Just keep pinching, and once they're shaped, place them on your baking sheet as equally apart as you can get them. Once all of them are on, we're just going to dust the tops with flour. You can do bread flour, or you can just do regular all-purpose flour. It doesn't matter. So sprinkle it on and then rub it into the tops of the rolls to help it stick. Then we do want to slash these. It's not just for decoration. It helps them bloom correctly in the oven and not rip in undesirable places. So either using a special tool for this or just a sharp serrated knife, go ahead and make either a slash or an X on the top of your loaves. Now, rolls take much shorter of a time to rise compared to a loaf of bread because they're small. So we are going to have these rise just at room temperature, and they're going to rise quickly. So make sure you cover them with heavily greased plastic wrap, because if something sticks to the top of these, when you go to pull it off, it's really going to ruin the look of your rolls. Go ahead and set them at warm room temperature, and about 20 minutes into your rising period, you're going to want to preheat your oven. When you preheat your oven, put in an empty rimmed baking sheet. We want that empty baking sheet to get really hot, because that's going to help us create steam for when these rolls bake. So about halfway through your rising time, go ahead and do that. When your oven has preheated, go and check your rolls. It should have been about a total of a 45-minute rising time, and they should look very puffy. pour 1 cup of water into that empty baking sheet. It's gonna buckle, it's gonna be loud, there's gonna be lots of steam, that's fine. Stick the baking sheet with your rolls in, quickly close up the oven, and set your timer for, I start with 15 minutes, but mine usually go more like 18 minutes. This is really, it seems like a long time, but that steam brings your oven temperature way down, so that's why they're gonna bake longer than a typical roll. So check at 15, they can go up all the way up to 20. When they're done, we take them out and cool.